Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blog, where I shake my brain nips every day to get some of that dirty YouTube money so that I can afford to provide you folks in-person hands-on technology education classes. Silicon Dojo, silicondojo.com. We do classes in Durham, North Carolina on artificial intelligence and a whole bunch of other things. We have a class on AI and SQL coming up on November 5th and a class on AI and web scraping coming up on November 19th. If you're interested in those classes, take a look at silicondojo.com. Also, remember, free to the user is not actually free. There's a little donor box link down below if you would like to throw a couple of dollars in. And with that, let's get to the shaking the brain nips. So the one thing you might be thinking right now is, well, if nothing else, it can't get worse than this. And all my friends, if you believe that, I don't know, you're an idiot. I mean, goddamn, how fucking stupid are you? You don't think it can get worse than this? Oh, motherfuckers, it can get so much worse than this. So anyways, we have Trump doing whatever the hell Trump is doing. Don't even try. Eli, you have TDS. The question is not why I have TDS. The question is why you don't. Let me just be clear. All those people out there that think that's an insult, he just has Trump derangement syndrome. It's like, yeah, why don't you? What is wrong with you at this point? Literally, Canada is getting an additional 10% tariff because Trump didn't like the ad that they had running in the United States. So Reagan did a speech back in the 1980s talking about the problems with tariffs. Basically, Canada kind of sliced up his speaking thing, overlaid it with some different things, and put the ad out in the United States. And so Trump is having a hissy fit. And so 10% tariff increase over a TV ad, which, again, I've just got to go back to how does he have this power? Like, even if you argue, like, you need tariffs for a national security issue, right? Because that's what his argument is. The reason this isn't going through Congress is because it's an emergency. How do you say a television ad is something that rises to an emergency level to the point where you bypass Congress? Like fentanyl, I don't agree with fentanyl. I think that's fucking stupid. But maybe if you're drunk and you look at it out of the corner of your eye, maybe you can make that work. Illegal immigrants coming through the Canadian border. I mean, again, I guess it depends on what you think is a lot of people, right? Maybe you can call that a national security concern. How the hell do you call a television ad a national security issue? But anyways, he has, and the Republicans in Congress are castrated fucking poodles that are so busy pissing over themselves, pretending to be alpha dogs, that they don't do their actual damn jobs. To be clear, this is not one of those where I say, I'm not mad at Trump, I'm really mad at the Republicans. No, fuck Trump, and I would appreciate if the welfare queens in Congress that are Republicans would do their fucking job. But anyways. So the curious thing, and I've talked about this for a while, because it's been known. It's been fucking known for well over a decade. This is a vulnerability that has been known since Trump's first term in office. I will remind you at this point in time, Trump came into office 9 years ago, right? The piece of shit garbage president that didn't give a fuck about America 9 years ago allowed this to become a problem. Oh, was that Obama? No, it was Trump. So anyways, the issue that we're looking at now, right? So we got this big thing with China. We got the whole thing going on with China. Anyway, so China is trying to restrict rare earth minerals, right? So rare earth minerals are used in things like missiles, and rocket ships, and fighter aircraft, and televisions, and smartphones, and that type of thing. And so they're putting a licensing control on all their rare earth minerals. Again, if they looked at a rare earth out of their corner of their eye, and that went into a product, they have the right to license how that product can be sold, which would be an asininely stupid concept if we hadn't done the exact same thing for the past couple of years. So anyways, one of the interesting things that comes up is that a lot of our, just a massive amount of our industrial capacity has been handed over to China over the past 30 years. It just has. And the one of the big issues too is that we're not really reshoring industrial capacity. Again, think about this. Think about and all this stuff you hear about in the news, whether you listen to CNN or Fox, whether you listen to Newsmax or MSNBC or whatever. Have you heard about the massive new trade skill programs that are being funded? Have you heard about how the billions of dollars that were going to get routed to Harvard are now being routed to high schools for their vocational programs? Wouldn't that be nice? Again, is it constitutional for Trump to remove funding from Harvard? Probably not. Again, real politics here. You reroute billions of dollars of funding from Harvard to vocational programs in high school. I'll be like, you shouldn't do that. But darn. But oh golly, blue collar kids are actually going to learn the trades that America needs in order to rebuild our society instead of academic, what are the fucks they are nowadays getting those billions of dollars. Like I'd be fine for it, but we're not. We're not. We're not funding the trade schools. We're not funding the vocational programs. We're not teaching people how to build factories or any of that crap. We're just punishing people. We're just punishing people. So anyways, with all this kind of thing, one of the big things that's come up, and I've talked about this before, is the precursors, right? So the ingredients that go into drugs. And China produces a tremendous amount of the things that go into drugs, right? If we take a look at this here, before we even get into the title, just so you understand, top 10 markets for China-made active pharmaceutical ingredients. So I guess instead of precursors now, they're called APIs. India buys $6.1 billion of those every year. United States buys $4.5 billion of those every year. So basically these are the ingredients, right? This is the sugar, this is the flour, this is the chocolate chip that goes into chocolate chip cookie, right? So you sell a chocolate chip cookie for $5 and you probably put 50 cents or $1 worth of material in there. So when you look at $4.5 billion of these APIs, just realize the actual value of the drugs that get sold are going to be significantly more than that. Not only that, but we actually get a lot of our drugs from India. So India buys 6.1 billion of the APIs. They put that into drugs, and then they also sell that to the United States. So when we talk about China basically creating these APIs or precursors for the drugs, this is a big market. And so basically what's being put on the table, and has been talked about a little bit for a while, is China's pharma leverage is, quote, nuclear option in U.S. trade talks. What if China literally stops the exports of the shit that actually keeps us alive? Like rare earths keep our economy alive, right? This shit keeps us alive, right? Land of the fat ass, can't take a 2-mile walk, save their life. People, we need a lot of drugs to stay alive. Can you imagine if just a massive chunk of those drugs was no longer accessible, right? It is a real problem. Again, it's one of the issues we have, whether it's Obama, whether it's Biden, whether it's Trump, or whether it's Trump again, right? Our medical system in the United States is effed, right? I've talked about this before with my wife having thyroid cancer. So my wife had thyroid cancer many years ago at this point. One of the interesting things is after you get your thyroid removed, the next thing they want to do is they want to give you radioactive iodine. So the idea is that you take this radioactive iodine pill, the thyroid sucks up iodine that has poison in it essentially, and so it kills all the thyroid cells, additional thyroid cells in your body. The thing is they want the thyroid cells that are in your body to be very, very hungry. They want the thyroid cells to be hungry so that they actually suck up the iodine. If the thyroid cells aren't hungry, they might not suck up the iodine, and then you might get recurrence of cancer, theoretically going in the future. So anyways, right? There's a drug that you can take that basically rips all the iodine or whatever out of your body in a couple of days. Either a couple of days or it's about a week, and basically drops you to the point you can take the radioactive iodine pretty quickly and go about your life. The interesting thing, again, a number of years ago, is that the factory that was producing that particular drug had a problem with the FDA. The FDA went in and said, naughty, 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 you can't ship the drug until you fix things. So the entire country was out of that drug. So instead of a process being a couple of days or a week, the process ended up being a month, right? You have to deprive your body of this crap for a month to make sure, the thyroid uptakes the radioactive iodine. The issue is for a lot of people, they become absolutely exhausted. Thankfully for my wife, she didn't become absolutely exhausted, but we were told specifically, like, this is incredibly hard on the body. So my wife, right, most likely won't even want to get out of bed. It will be very difficult to do things, the whole 9 yards, which meant I had to, again, as I was doing consulting work at the time, I had to take essentially an entire month off of work. That's when I bought a PlayStation 3. Way back when, I hadn't played video games for forever. I literally bought a PlayStation 3 and got my ass whipped for the next month playing Call of Duty all the time. Anyways, because I was being a good husband and waiting on my wife because she was going to feel so bad, right? Think about the economic harm, and think about the economic harm at scale. So one, my wife was down for an additional month. Instead of her being down for a week, taking the pill and being back to life, she was down for a month until she could take the pill. I had to be her caregiver for a month. And then you think about all the people that were going through thyroid cancer at that time, dealing with that kind of idiocy. Now imagine how many drugs that are out there that we basically take for granted and assume should exist. And imagine if they don't exist anymore. Imagine if they're not there. Right now, again, my wife doesn't have a thyroid anymore, so she takes Synthroid. I need to tell her to stock up on her Synthroid. Again, think about this. Think about the precursors for Synthroid disappear or become much more limited, right? This is a drug she has to be on for the rest of her life, right? And I've seen what happens when you tweak with that motherfucker. I'm just gonna put it on the table. You don't want to be screwing with this crap for the rest of your life. If your body works right now without needing any drugs, I'm just saying maybe you should stick with that. Because the moment you do stupid shit that makes your body require drugs for the rest of your life, things become a lot more squirrely. But anyways, right? She's on Synthroid for the when I say, again, you say Synthroid, like what actually goes into Synthroid? How much of Synthroid comes from China? How much of Synthroid comes from India? What components? Are there 15 ingredients that go into Synthroid and one of those ingredients comes from China? And so they're talking about the idea that basically China could be like, well, you want to screw with us this hard, we can screw back. And it is like this weird, it's a very fucked up world that we're in. President Xi Jinping's stranglehold on rare earths will give China unprecedented leverage to win concessions from the U.S. During talks this weekend in Kuala Lumpur. Sitting in Beijing's reserve is control over an even more vital supply chain, medicine. China's power rests on its grip over the global supply chain of active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs, which are core components of commercial drugs. Beijing's broad sway extends upstream to the raw chemicals, solvents, and reagents known as key starting materials needed to make the APIs themselves. U.S. officials, former trade negotiators, and analysts say America's dependence on Beijing for such exports create a risk too big to ignore, even though China has not directly threatened drug supplies. We are not threatening any drug supplies. We are not threatening any drug. We would just like you to notice, though, that we have to announce that we're not threatening any drug supplies. We are not threatening any drug supplies. And by stating we're not threatening any drug supplies, we are stating that we can threaten drug supplies. Oh, Lordy. That could change if President Donald Trump's trade war escalated to maximum levels. And again, you're looking at this right now. Trump is talking about putting 100% stacking tariff onto China on top of everything else. At what point do they escalate? Right? A lot of this stuff going on right now with Trump and the United States versus the rest of the world is Trump does something and then people respond to that thing. And they generally respond to that thing at a bit of a lower level, right? It is, we will face what you're doing with retaliation, but we're not going to try to escalate. Here's a question. What happens if China just gets pissed? And they're like, boy wants to play? Little, fat, senile bastard wants to play? Motherfucker, we can play. And that becomes like a real question. Like it is fascinating to me with Trump, with so much of this stuff. how everybody is basically acquiescing. Like, it's bizarre to me. Again, like with Europe, with Canada, even with China to many ways. Like there's really this kid glove thing where it's like, again, they will do things, but it's generally only in response to something that we did. And generally it's lesser than we did. Look, this is a response, but we're pulling our punches. The concern is what happens when the other side gets tired of pulling their punches. Again, politics, right? Even in China, politics matter, right? Optics matter. When does it go from you being supposedly the superior, more level-headed party to the point that it seems like you're getting shit on? Like, how long can the Chinese people, fuck Xi, how long can the Chinese people feel like they're being shit on by America, right? When Vice President Vance talks about the peasants, funding our lifestyle here. When you talk about Obama's Pacific Pivot and the Democrats' Trans-Pacific Partnership and Biden's, AI export controls and all of the stuff that Trump is doing, right? When you look at all of that, at what point will it continue to be acceptable for Chinese people to simply walk away, right? At what point will they demand a response? And then when they demand a response, where the hell does that go? That's why all of this is like, again, like we have what they've been arguing for 50 years. I mean, like that's the hard part with what Trump's doing, is if we are going to rewind this, it's going to take at least a decade to rewind. Again, just by the numbers. If we are going to reshore, if we're going to do a lot of things, it's going to take a tremendous amount of investment, a tremendous amount of work, and it will take at least a decade to do, right? The whole thing with globalization, the whole thing with this is the idea to tie countries together so fundamentally with their economies that it no longer makes sense to go to war, right? If we bomb China, we lose access to drugs we need to stay alive, right? That keeps you from wanting to go to war with the other side is the concept there, right? China bombs Thailand or Taiwan, they risk, the United States cutting off the entire trade market, and so the Chinese people start starving to death, right? The idea is we tie our economies together to such a degree. And so the thing is, when you have Trump come in and he starts fucking breaking shit all willy-nilly, again, there's a huge question of here is at what point, when does the straw just break the economic system? And then what does that mean? So many times we talk about the economic system. Like when we talk about China, you'll notice the conversation. You talk about China, it's about Temu, right? You talk about China, it's about intellectual property theft. Like when we talk about China, how many people are talking about the pharmaceuticals? How many people are talking about the fundamental components of modern society that we buy from China? That if those things get cut off, right? This isn't simply whether you can pay your mortgage. This is whether or not you can live. Let's see here. Quote, China has shown its willingness to weaponize economic leverage when it suits its interest. Oh, fuck you, you Republican piece of shit. China has shown its willingness to weaponize economic leverage. You mean after we bitch smacked them? Oh my God, can you believe? After we walked up and bitch smacked China, they pushed us. It's like you walk up to somebody and go, wow. And then the motherfucker get back. Like literally, this is what China is doing. And we fucking big smack them. And it's like, well, that shows you what China's like. When it suits its interest, medicines and their inputs are no exception. Representative John Moulinier, Republican chairman of the House Select Committee on China, told Bloomberg, quote, we need to build resilience and secure supply chains. Yeah, Republicans, we do need to build shit. Hey, maybe if the Republicans in Congress get out their fucking asses and stop being fucking welfare queens for a second and actually do your goddamn jobs, maybe you could actually build shit. But I have to say, as an American citizen, I don't fucking see it. I do not see how we are rebuilding our society. Again, under Biden with COVID, right? We should have had some kind of, Peace Corps or whatever for medical incidents, right? Where under Biden were the Gen Zs told, this is your time to stand up and show the world what you can do, get training in the medical fields so that, for COVID and for diseases and things going in the future, we know that we will have a first response force to deal with these kind of medical emergencies, right? Fucking Biden didn't give a shit about that, right? Biden didn't give a fuck about empowering this country. And the thing too is the Republicans don't either, right? The Republicans here are now all about punishing China and punishing Canada and punishing everybody. But where do you hear the actual building up? I hear a lot of promises. I don't see where we're actually funding the building and that kind of stuff. Xi has already unveiled export controls with the potential to impact the medical field. China's curbs on 7 metals in April covered powerful magnets for MRI scanners. Again, things I wouldn't have thought about. Beijing followed that this month by targeting 5 elements, including thulium and iridium, which are essential for medical lasers. So yeah. Anyways, this will be curious. Oh, if you don't laugh, you don't laugh. You just go jump off a roof. I don't know what to tell you, right? But so we're gonna see where this goes, right? Because again, we've got the tariffs against them, and they're fighting back. You have the Netherlands confiscating, seizing Nexperia. So now the Chinese part of Nexperia is no longer selling the chips to the Western auto manufacturers. We have the rare earths metal thing. We might have 100% tariff coming down the pike. It is just an absolute and utter shit show. And it is curious just to be thinking about how far this will go. And again, if China does the nuclear option, how long would it take for us to start producing these particular products? It's not something that can't be done, right? I'm not saying like the United States cannot do this. We absolutely can. We can reindustrialize. But it's going to take a lot of time, energy, money, and effort to reindustrialize. And again, with these very basic things that are needed for modern society, literally, what happens if a chunk of our drug supply simply stops existing for us? I don't know. We're going to find out. We will find out. So what do you think about this? What do you think about the Chinese nuclear option leveraging pharma? What do you think about them selling? Was it $4.5 billion of ingredients to the United States, $6.1 billion to India? And again, India produces many of our drugs. What do you think about if that got cut off? Do you even know, if you take a drug every day, do you know all the components that go into that drug? Could America have 15 or 14 of the 15 ingredients needed? Right? If you're making chocolate chip cookies, right? If you don't have brown sugar, if you don't have sugar, you don't have a cookie. It's like, well, I've got flour, and I've got baking soda, and I've got chocolate chips, and I've got nuts, and you don't got sugar. You don't got a damn chocolate chip cookie, right? And when we're dealing with drugs, it's more catastrophic than if you have a cookie recipe problem. What do you think about that? No, put your thoughts down below. If you like these videos, give us a thumbs up. If you hate these videos, give us a thumbs down. Call me amazing, call me a dumbass. Just be a real lutnick and do it down there in the comment section. Do remember Silicon Dojo. SiliconDojo.com is what I actually care about. Free to end user hands-on technology education that empowers you to do whatever it is you want to do in Durham, North Carolina. We have a class on AI and SQL, structured query language, coming up on November 5th. We have AI and web scraping coming up on November 19th. Do remember, free to the end user is not free. There's a donor box link down below if you would actually like to support that. And with that, see y'all later.